Welcome to a conversation about investing in industrial transformation. I'm Bruce Leak, a partner at Playground Global, and we back founders re-engineering the physical world. We invest in things like the future of computing, robotics, automation, biology, materials, and engineering. And we look for breakthrough technologies that will change industries. We love founders. They're willing to go after the hardest problems that most people are smart enough to actively avoid. And industrial transformation is one of those opportunities known as no-fly zones. 3 years ago, we invested in a bold company going after one of the largest industries called Ideon Technologies, and we have their founder, Gary, here to tell us about that journey.
Thanks, Bruce. Good morning, everybody. I'm Gary Agnew, CEO and co-founder at Ideon Technologies. At Ideon, we're unlocking subsurface potential for humanity. And how we're doing that is we're building the subsurface intelligence layer that really allows our partners to unlock the riches of the earth in their respective industries, and we're starting in mining.
Gary, your technology could do so many different things. It could X-ray large infrastructure projects like dams for failures. It could let scientists see inside of volcanoes and understand their risk profile. Why start with mining?
To be honest, Bruce, I asked myself that a few times over the last 5 years. Look, mining is a hard industry. It's complex, but it's really important to the future of humanity. And so we were focused on an industry where we could make a difference. Now, when we stepped back and we looked at a range of vertical markets, well, a few things struck us about mining. First of all, this industry had not been through its transformative years. And then there was this emerging conversation about critical metals and the metals we need to really be catalysts to human progress. And what we've seen was this industry was stuck. It was stuck using 150-year-old drilling technology, really taking biopsies of the earth. And the biopsies just caused a huge error rate in terms of the way the industry worked. So what we've seen was huge economic leverage, geopolitical leverage, though I'm not quite sure we'd anticipated quite so much geopolitical disruption as we've seen over the last few months, and certainly environmental leverage, where our technology enables a lower impact for mining for our customers and for the planet. And so all of those things together, we just seen mining as really the place to start, where we can maximize value and really help our customers transform their business.
So what I'm hearing is mining is more than just a market. For you, it's a mission.
Yeah, you could say that. Look, we're purpose-driven founders. We've got a purpose-driven team, and we really wanted to help make a difference in the world. And being a catalyst to human progress, I guess there's not much bigger a mission than that one, Bruce. So, Bruce, you see thousands of startups in your role at Playground. What stood out for you about Ideon?
At Playground, we look for founders using breakthrough technologies to go after some of the hardest and most important problems. And for us, Ideon checked all the boxes, right? I mean, the technology was extraordinary. Not everybody's building their own muon detectors, even to know what a muon detector is, but then applying it to real opportunities in industry. But it wasn't just the technology, it was also the team, right? I mean, this wasn't just a science team. It was a team that could take the technology, explain it to customers, understand their pain points, and build solutions. You guys had already had traction with some of the largest mining companies in the world before we invested. That was really impressive.
Yeah, we weren't just chasing trends or looking for likes or clicks, that's for sure. We were taking on a really hard problem, and you mentioned team, Bruce. One of the things that really inspires me is the team that we've been assembling at Ideon over the last number of years. And even back then, a team with the tenacity, the energy, the commitment, the drive to take on what seemed like impossible problems. So yeah, bold mission, deep tech, extraordinary team, but something that really had meaning and purpose for humanity.
There was another thing that really stood out when I was looking to invest in Ideon, and that is you had a customer that had you under a very strict NDA, and you couldn't tell even your investors much about this company. And yet, you were getting revenue from them, and they were one of your largest customers. And later I found out that your first customer was a reality TV show. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, Bruce, all the go-to-market planning in the world focused on mining and the segments within mining, and lo and behold, a Hollywood studio become our first commercial customer. And so it was out of the blue, they reached out. They've got an island off the coast of Nova Scotia. The program's called The Curse of Oak Island. It's actually the History Channel's #1 viewed program. And they reached out and they asked us the question, could you come and image an area of the island called the Money Pit? Now, as soon as I heard Money Pit, I was engaged. And so, lo and behold, they were due to be our 5th deployment globally. But this was right in the middle of COVID. We had our solution stuck in various stages of transport around the world. And lo and behold, the Curse of Oak Island became our first paying customer. And I can tell you, we had brand new sensors, brand new deployment methods, we had new data processing methods, and we had TV cameras in our face as we were deploying this and activating this technology for the very first time. But again, back to the team stepped up to that challenge, and actually what we found out is the Curse of Oak Island is actually the guilty pleasure for many of the technical folks in the major mining companies. And so it actually did a great service to us in terms of getting the Ideon brand established and helping our customers see the potential we had in this technology.
I just can't believe that you end up on a whole season of a reality TV show and they're paying you, where most startups or real companies would do the opposite.
It was quite nice for the pitch deck as well, Bruce.
So, look, mining obviously isn't a startup-friendly adventure. It's a $1 trillion industry dominated by a handful of players that operate on the scale of, governments. How does a startup get their attention and break in?
Well, you don't really break in mining. You build in. These are large global organizations managing a full end-to-end supply chain, complex, almost like government ministries in terms of their governance processes. So yeah, these are complex organizations. The scale you mentioned, I think, is really important for people to understand. To give you an idea, our customers every year are moving about 1 billion tons of earth, 100 billion tons of earth, actually, 100 billion, so 275 million tons of earth every single day. Now that's difficult to interact with, difficult to get a sense of what does that mean. What that means is they're moving enough material to build the Panama Canal every single day. That took 10 years, and they're moving that earth every day, or rebuilding Manhattan from scratch every 2 days. So the enormity and the scale our customers operate at is quite something. And I think we engage with a lot of empathy and understanding that there's a complex business they're managing. So we had to make some tough early calls to try and penetrate this customer base. Greenfield exploration we started, or brownfield operations, innovation team or operations. These were some of the complex challenges and decisions we had to make early on. We chose major mining companies as the entry point. The greenfield segment, very helpful, move quickly, can get a pilot stood up in no time, but really don't typically have the capital or the market influence that we wanted to be able to drive adoption more globally. And so we chose the major mining companies as really the entry point to focus our efforts.
You mentioned innovation companies. All major corporations, international corporations have these innovation teams who are out there scouting for startups to do proof of concepts with, but they don't have budgets, they don't run operations, they don't plan, the future of how these things operate. What advice do you have for founders, engaging with multinational corporations? Should you work with the operations team, or should you go straight to a business unit that has a pain point and has a budget?
Well, the truth is you've got to do both. But what you've got to be attuned to is which part of the organization to focus on different times. And certainly the innovation team, they've got capital, they've got a desire to try new technology, and certainly that's a great place to get started. But you've got to be clear where the money is earned in your customer's business, where the budgets are, and where true transformation happens, and that's in operation. So yes, innovation teams, but be clear when you need to transition and really unlock value in the mine operations. Now, what I didn't perhaps realize at the time going into this is that I was going to have to play counselor, matchmaker, facilitator to different functions within the customer organization. Nobody had prepared me for that. And so actually my background, living in corporate for more than 20 years, I kind of knew the game a bit, knew some of the language, knew some of the issues. So actually that's actually been very helpful in trying facilitating across the customer organization to get to the outcomes that Ideon was passionate about.
Yeah, they don't even know necessarily the people in their organization that you work with.
We were introducing people for the very first time, a part of our value add. Now, Bruce, you know, behind the scenes, Series A, you just made the investment. Give the audience a sense what you've seen, what your first impressions were.
Well, like any deep tech startup, you know, early on it's just a roller coaster ride. And, you know, some things go as planned, but most things don't. I particularly remember a meeting early on where we're onboarding new customers, you're onboarding new employees, you're having supply chain challenges to build enough sensors to support all your customers. And we had a meeting about one of your deployments in a really remote corner of the Yukon. And you know, this customer and this opportunity had all the challenges that you don't want to see in one place, right? Really hard to get to, very difficult to keep the power on in these remote sites, very difficult to keep the communications, the data communications, even through the satellites working. And we had problems shipping in sensors, some of them got lost. And I remember sitting in a meeting with your team, and an email came in the middle of that meeting, and everybody was focused on their screen reading the email. And you know, this was at a point where I thought things couldn't get any worse. And everybody simultaneously said, "That's fantastic." And I thought, great, finally we got a good break. And then what I learned was that the few remaining sensors we had on site got crushed in a borehole collapse. So could you explain to me why that was fantastic?
Yeah, we use "that's fantastic" as really a cultural practice at Ideon. And really it turns failure into fuel. You know, when you're in the startup business, failure is your ever-present colleague. It shows up every single day. But it's not about the failure, it's how you react to that failure. And what we choose to do at Ideon is say, "That's fantastic." And that's the trigger for us to figure out what the silver lining in this failure is and how that's going to help us be a better company, a better partner in the future.
Yeah, I really loved how that saved all the calories that people would want to spend on, you know, what went wrong, and let them focus them all on how are we going to fix it and how are we going to move forward. And at a startup, you only have so much energy, and focusing it on the future versus the past is always the right answer. So,
and Bruce, maybe before you move on, I mean, just one of the things I wanted to compliment Bruce and the Playground team on, you know, when you take on a new investor, you're never quite sure what you're going to get. But what I found in those early months is not just an investor who's going to show up at board meetings, critique the numbers, move on, you know, sleeves rolled up, in the trenches with us, helping us figure it out. I mean, that was huge value add from you and your team, Bruce. Really appreciated it. Continue to appreciate it.
It's a long journey. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the technology.
Yeah, sure. Our Reveal platform, really I'll talk about a few key components. First of all, our quantum muon sensors. This is a game-changing capability that allows us to really use the sensitivity of quantum sensing to really understand the environment around the sensor in a way that's never been done before. And those sensors detect a small subatomic particle called a muon. There's a muon hitting every single one of your head every second as we go through this presentation. You may not have been aware of that. That's been happening since the day you were born. So anyway, we have these muon sensors that allow us to create the highest resolution imaging of the Earth's subsurface. So that's our kind of foundational layer. But then what we recognize is the customer has years, decades, and sometimes centuries worth of existing data that adds value. And by using the high-resolution muon imaging, we were actually able to integrate that with multi-physics, but be able to tease out more value, tease out more understanding from that old data than the customer had found before. And so it's a 1 + 1 = 3 type impact. So then we've got this common data platform now where we're hosting all of that data, and then we're using AI to really sift through huge volumes of data, be able to understand the key insights, you know, shepherd out the noise, and provide the intelligence to our customers to understand what to do and where to go next. And that's really been a huge, huge game changer. And then finally, Reveal Universe we give our customers an amazing, immersive user experience through our software platform and capabilities that just geologists could have wished of. Geologists in mining historically have spent somewhere between 60 to 80% of their time putting data together, let alone trying to understand what the data is telling them. And so what we've built is a platform, the Reveal platform, that does all that heavy lifting for them, brings proprietary data to the table, and gives them conversational tools to be able to query huge volumes of data to get the intelligence, the subsurface intelligence layer that really makes their job easier and way more valuable to their employer.
So what you're saying is the muon tomography creates this base map that allows you to layer all the other information onto a single pane of glass to allow these companies to run their business.
That's 100% right. And look, the best analogy I can give you is medical imaging. Now, medical imaging is the enabler of laparoscopic surgery in the human body. So you imagine in days gone by, open heart surgery, hugely invasive, huge recovery times, costly, all of those things. But medical imaging provided the precision understanding of what was going on in the human body, and then from that we were able to adapt surgical, keyhole surgeon techniques that allowed to minimize the impact. That's a great analog for what we're doing for the mining business, providing them high resolution, understanding of the subsurface, enabling them precisely target where they go and what they do next.
Yeah, not only does it become more efficient, it's also better for the environment.
100%. It's more efficient, they save costs, they recover more, they also compress time. And when we've got a 500% increase in critical minerals to achieve, compressing time is one way to increase volume. And as you say, minimizing the impact in the environment, and that's enabling mining to be a much better steward of the planet than perhaps they have been in days gone by when that technology wasn't available. So, Bruce, I know there's a number of founders in the audience. Maybe you can give them some advice on what they should think about when they're trying to raise capital in a hard industry, an industry like mining.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my advice to founders is to think of investors more like customers, right? It's really about a relationship and not a transaction. And you should approach who you think would be your ideal next investor before you need their money. Mm-hmm. In fact, meeting investors when you're not raising is the perfect time to have an honest conversation and understand whether you're a good fit for them or not.
Yeah.
There's too much pressure when you need the money. But when you don't need the money, investors are much more honest and much more transparent. And you need to build that relationship over time. They need to understand not only that you have the right idea and the right plan, but that you can execute. And so, by having a long relationship where you say, here's what I'm going to do, and here's what I did, now give me money, it's a lot different than give me money.
So it's kind of like working with mining companies. You've got to build trust and confidence over time, and not just show up when you're looking for a purchase order.
It's exactly like that. And, frankly, Ideon was differentiated when I was looking at investing by having an extraordinary independent board directors, right? Most companies, when I invest, just have founders on the board. Ideon had 2 outside veterans from the mining company as independent directors. And many founders make the mistake of, I want a smaller board, I want to be able to move faster. And that's just not how it works. By having industry experience on your board, you can make smarter decisions, and you can move faster with customers, which is going to create a lot more value. And as an investor, seeing them there and being able to talk to them and learn about the industry from people that were on your board made it a lot safer bet for me.
Yeah. No, Alan and Eric have been 2 tremendous additions to our team. Took a long time to find them, and again, this theme of patience and precision comes through. It took almost 2 years. I kissed a lot of frogs in those 2 years that did not turn into princes. But eventually, 2 princes showed up. And really what I was looking for were 2 things. I wanted an inside-out understanding of mining. I'd spent my career servicing the mining industry from outside, and Alan was VP technology at BHP, the largest mining company in the world for 5 years. He understood the problem from the inside, and so hugely valuable in helping us navigate where we should focus. And then Eric had scaled a mining technology company, and so he was in my role in years gone by, and so he knew all the puts and takes. And so the advice and the expertise and the insight they provided me, I believe as a founder, you've got to cover your blind spots. You've got to bring a team and a board together that helps cover the things that you're not great at or that aren't your strengths. And Alan and Eric have done that in spades.
I mean, frankly, Ideon has the most effective board I'm on. And after that experience, I've gone to all of my startups and encouraged them to get independent board members much sooner than they normally would. So Gary, what's the future look like for Ideon and for the mining industry?
It's a pretty exciting moment in time, Bruce. Today we are landing, expanding, and scaling with the largest mining companies in the world. And that's been a 5-year journey of, I call it prove it, and prove it again in terms of pilots and trials. But we're past that inflection point. And certainly in the next couple of weeks, I can't say which of those major mining companies it will be, but one of those major mining companies, we're going to be announcing a global enterprise deal where we go from one successful demonstration of our technology to being deployed on 6 sites around the world at every single stage of the mining value chain across commodities like copper, nickel, gold, boron. I mean, it's just a game changer for our company, and so that's a huge springboard to industry-wide adoption. Now, in terms of the industry overall, again, I've got a lot of excitement for where mining's at. This industry that we all kind of look down our nose at in years gone by has suddenly got its moment in the spotlight, and the industry is energized and focused on really becoming a critical industry in the world. And so, we're scaling with those global mining companies. We're shifting from pilots to a platform play that really unlocks huge amount of potential in their business over the coming years. We're building what you could say is the Google Maps for the subsurface. The Google Maps that helps our customers know where to go and what to do next. And with that capability, and that capability is really helping them economically, helping them from a stakeholder management perspective, and helping them be much, much better stewards of the environment. Now, in mining, it seems impossible every day. I mean, you've heard this theme come up a few times in the presentation. At our office out in Richmond, one of my favorite quotes is from Nelson Mandela, and we have it up on the wall in the office. And that quote is, "It always seems impossible until it's done." And why we have that quote on the wall is to infuse the culture at Ideon. Not to be surprised when impossible shows up. The customer is paying us to deal with the impossible for them, to solve problems that they can't solve on their own. And so when impossible shows up, that's the time when we can get to work and really use the unbelievable talent and technology we have in our team to help our customers achieve their full potential in mining.
And for founders in the audience, I would just recommend don't shy away from some of the hardest opportunities out there. By going after the hardest problems, you have the opportunity to literally change the world. And if you're successful, you'll have that entire market to yourself because everybody else is afraid of it.
That sounds good to me, Bruce.
And then you can all say, "That's fantastic." Thank you.